Hey guys, it's Destiny, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about my simulated universe tips, how to go about defeating World 3 and beyond, because I've actually heard some people are still stuck on World 3, so I do have some suggestions for difficulty 1 and 2, and also I'll like to recommend which sets I feel like you should be grinding for, since there has been some debate regarding that as well. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. Let's start with World 3. So I had difficulty 2 defeated. This was very much a pain to defeat. I do think it's pretty annoying fighting Gepard, but let's just go over the first one initially. So here you see Gepard, he is weak to physical, lightning, and imaginary. So what I would recommend just off the bat, if you do have Clara in my opinion is the easiest way to clear this, because Clara just honestly demolishes Gepard, assuming you have the correct supports with Clara. I would personally recommend a healer, possibly another DPS, so if you have Zila, Su Shang, or somebody else, you could do that. You can also put on a buffer, maybe Ting Yun, maybe Bronya. If you have Asta, that could possibly work as well. If you do have Welt, that could be pretty beneficial as well, since Gepard is also weak to imaginary, and Welt can also help whittle down that weakness meter. So that could be pretty good, and Welt is super effective against these 3 enemies over here. So overall, I feel like Welt is actually really good for World 3 as well. Zila can be pretty nice if you do have her just as a DPS character, but you absolutely want to make sure that you have a character that can provide you sustainability, such as Bailu, possibly your own Gepard, and so on. Personally, I think Bailu or Natasha would be better though, because what they provide is, one, they're able to help with breaking Gepard's weakness meter, since Natasha is physical, Bailu is lightning, so they can help out with defeating Gepard here even further. And overall, I think your sustainability matters a lot, because when you fight Gepard, he will summon minions, or rather his backup, and he does this move where he shields himself and everybody else, and you have to whittle down that shield, which is really where your sustainability will come in, because if you can't sustain yourself while he's doing this, he is just going to wipe out your team alongside his backup. Now, if we look at difficulty 2 here, now the levels are higher, but he is weak to the exact same thing. I would recommend possibly doing the exact same team comp, if not similar. You definitely need, once again, that sustainability. I personally had to use a shielder and a healer to defeat this. You don't need Gepard and Bailu per se. You can literally do Fire MC, maybe March, or Natasha. Natasha, if you're free to play, for sure, I would bring her along, because of how difficult it is to deal with Gepard. And once again, also the Clara or Su Shang thing you could do. You can also do physical MC if you are missing either one of those 2 characters. I personally think though, at least from my experience, I do prefer Clara or Su Shang, but it doesn't really matter. Whatever you have can work. There is a way to beat this regardless of who you have. But I would highly recommend that you absolutely keep in mind his weaknesses and make sure you have enough sustainability. When you launch the simulated universe, I'm just going to click confirm. I think I can go back. Yes. For the path, I personally used preservation, because this allowed me to have more absorption with my shields for my characters, which in turn allowed me to have bulkier shields using Gepard. If you use March or Fire MC, this could be really useful as well. Abundance can possibly be good as well. There it is. Let me go back. Abundance right here could be really good for your healer as well. Once again, I focused on sustainability. You can go for a more offensive path, but I do personally recommend going a more defensive path. And typically speaking, I do prefer the defensive paths, because as I play through, I will be able to obtain, blessings of other paths, but these paths will be really crucial for making sure you survive those phases that the characters do have. Additionally, if you are enjoying this video so far and I am helping you out, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and let's carry on. Now let's go to World 2. World 4. I've not been able to clear this world. I've come really close, but it is quite difficult if I'm being honest with you guys. So now let's look over this, and the weaknesses once again stay the same, so I'll just show this screen. As you see, a lot of them are weak to fire. A character that is really good for this is Himiko, Fire MC, or Hook. These 3 characters are really good. If you do not have Himiko, I would recommend Hook for weakness breaking this man over here, because it is quite crucial to break his weakness meters. He is not really, in my opinion, too powerful in phase 1 and 2, but phase 3, at least in the secondary difficulty, he starts to summon these hands, and these hands take a hold of one of your characters. When this happens, it's a bit bad because in difficulty 2, he keeps summoning them very frequently, and if you do not have your ultimate ready, so let's say you're using Himiko ultimate or even Zila here, which I believe the hands are weak to Quantum if I'm not mistaken. It depends on what hand is spawned, but I know one of the hands are weak to Quantum. So when he summons these hands, I would honestly have an ultimate prepared, because if you're able to break the weakness meter of the hand will go into that sort of like, I guess, combust mode, or that mode where it's kind of like overheating, if you will, and it will not take one of your characters as a result. So you really need to be able to have your ultimates ready and keep in mind your ultimates. Of course, if you're able to just power through this, then more power to you. Personally, I have not been able to power through difficulty 2 here. It is really hard to beat, in my opinion, because of how much he summons those hands in phase 3. He literally keeps summoning them back to back, and it can be a bit annoying trying to get those hands out of the way as soon as possible, because you can't always have your ultimate up at all times. So breaking him is very crucial as well. I do personally think once we get Jing Yuan, this will be easier to clear since he is weak to lightning. And what we know about Jing Yuan is that he attacks, but he also has the Lightning Lord, which means Jing Yuan in turn is going to basically have a way to attack twice in the turn order, which could be really good for breaking Svarog here. But either way, it's really good for breaking him as well. So I think once Jing Yuan is here, this will be easier, but once again, those fire characters are pretty good. Once again, I recommend Hook, Fire MC, or Himiko. You do want sustainability here as well, but you can focus a bit more on damage, which I personally like doing that. Personally, when I go through this, I like having my healer or my shielder, possibly a buffer character to deal more damage, especially to those hands and Svarog himself, and using Zila is always nice. You don't need Zila though. You can possibly use any other DPS character you have built. You can actually use Dan Heng here, which my Dan Heng is over here. You can use Dan Heng as well, so I would recommend that. And for team comp, of course, just possibly your healer, your shielder, possibly a buffer, but you definitely want to make sure you're able to do damage and break the weakness meters. Now, Kafka, in my opinion, is really difficult to defeat if you do not have characters that can dispel debuffs. You absolutely need characters that can dispel debuffs on your team, otherwise this will be very difficult to defeat. What I recommend is characters like possibly Bronya if you have Bronya. If not, and you have built up March 7th, March 7th has a trace where when she shields an ally, she will be able to dispel a debuff. I think March 7th can actually be pretty good here since you'll be able to get your shields as well as your dispelling. And another character I think is really good is Natasha over here, because when Natasha heals, she's also able to dispel debuffs. So if you are free to play, I would definitely recommend looking at Natasha and March, but now you need to keep in mind of Kafka's weaknesses. What I could possibly recommend is, since she is weak to physical and wind, possibly Dan Heng, and you can also use characters like Sushang, Clara, and once again, physical MC. I think these characters will be pretty good against Kafka. You just absolutely need to be able to have sustainability against Kafka as well. I think sustainability is such a huge thing for being able to clear simulated universes. Of course, not accounting for the blessings. The blessings can definitely be a huge thing that can assist you in defeating these types of modes. But I'm going about this in a way to recommend a team comp that I personally think can be able to handle majority of the fight there and majority of the fight while defeating or trying to defeat the boss enemy. So I think Natasha is good. I think March is good. If you have Welt, he could be pretty good as well for weakness breaking Kafka here. But if not, it is okay. I would just recommend to have your shielders, your healers, characters that can dispel debuffs, and of course I also recommend making sure you have damage dealers, because if you're not able to defeat Kafka here or be able to whittle down her HP, it might be quite difficult. Now let's go over World 6. What I recommend for World 6, Cocolia is quite annoying, I would say, in Phase 2 and Phase 3. Phase 2, she has Bronya with her, which I believe Bronya is weak to physical, if I'm not mistaken, so that could be a good thing to keep in mind. But Bronya does not have as much health as Cocolia, of course, so you could possibly deal with Bronya just with Zila. I think Zila is incredibly good for dealing with World 6. Now, if you do not have Zila, an alternative can be our gambler girl over here. You could possibly use her. I feel like having a quantum character is really good because all three of these enemies are weak to quantum, and having fire can be pretty good as well. So you can bring a character like Hook, Fire MC, or Himiko. Either one of these three can be really good as well, either as your sub DPS, Fire MC for your shielder, and Himiko can be good for breaking as well when Cocolia summons the glacial things that go onto the field as well. I would call that her backup. Himiko's pretty good for dealing with this as well. So there's just a lot of options that you do have when it comes to fighting Cocolia. Now for lightning, I think Tingyun can be pretty nice here, possibly Bailu. Serval could be pretty good as well, possibly Arlen. It's ultimately up to you, but I would recommend bringing your main damage dealer, which if it's Zila, then bring Zila. If not, then the gambler girl. And of course, sustainability once again matters quite a lot here. If you have Bailu, use Bailu. If not, use Natasha, maybe March if you really want to use March. It ultimately depends on what blessings you get here, but I do think that there are plenty of options for dealing with Cocolia due to how many weaknesses she has. She does do quite a lot of damage, so I would just recommend being careful when you do fight Cocolia and keeping in mind that once you get to phase 3, she will be attacking quite frequently, same with phase 2, so just keeping that in mind. Make sure you have enough sustainability and make sure that you're able to defeat her weakness meters and do enough damage when her weakness meter is broken. I personally like having my ultimates ready, so I would weakness break her and then I would immediately use a Zila ultimate just to deal with Cocolia here. And as for the blessing, let me just do that real quick. For the blessing, I believe I used preservation. Once again, I just wanted bulkier shields. I believe I brought Gepard and Bailu just because I really like being able to sustain myself. Yeah, I don't think you need to bring 2 of those types of characters, but I personally like the preservation. You can go, once again, offensive here as well if you believe that your characters can do enough fast enough. But if you are not too sure about that, then the abundance or the preservation can be pretty good here. Of course, there is alternatives for all of this, but I'm just giving you guys general things of what you could do. Of course, for World 6, I think Jing Yuan will make it easier as well since Cocolia is weak to lightning. Now, when we go over all of these, which sets do I actually recommend you grind for? So honestly, I think all the worlds have pretty good sets. I actually like set 6 though, for World 6 rather, the most. While that may be, I guess, not a super popular opinion, I can explain why. So this set, in my opinion, is really good for a character like Gepard because you increase the wearer's defense by 15%. When the wearer's effect hit rate is 50% or higher, the wearer gains an extra 15% for defense. Gepard actually would want effect hit rate due to the fact that he has a base chance to freeze. When you have more effect hit rate, it can result in a higher chance to freeze. I don't feel like going over the formula currently. That's not what we're here for. I'm just giving you guys a sum up of why I think this set right here is excellent for a character like Gepard. You can also use it on a character like March 7th, so I think this set overall is really good. This set, in my opinion, is really good for your main damage dealers, like your DPS characters, because if you are building crits on them, this one increases your crit rate, and then when your current crit rate is 50% or higher, so you just have to keep in mind your character's crit rate through your substats and possibly even your main stat, your ultimate and your follow-up attack damage increases by 15%. So for a character like Zila, I feel like this set is really freaking good, and I have it on my own Zila, and I do like it because I do get additional crit, and then because my Zila's crit rate is 50% or higher, now my ultimate damage is even higher, which I think is excellent. So personally, I like that set a lot for main damage dealers. The World 3 is probably what most people recommend though, and I can see why. World 3 isn't bad either. So the Fleet of the Ageless can be really good for your healers since you're increasing your max HP by 12%. Characters like Bailu and I believe also Natasha scale off of HP, so the more HP you have, the better for your heals. If you do have enough speed on either of these characters, now your ally's attack will also increase by 8%. So this is really good. It just increases your wearer's attack by 12%, and then when your speed's 120 or higher, now you have that extra 12%, so its stacking is really good. So if you just want 24% attack that way, that is a good option. World 4 has this set. This is a break effect set. This could possibly be really good on your break characters, which some characters, in my opinion, can use break to a good amount. And as for this set, boosts your energy regeneration rate by 5%. Personally, I'm not a big fan of this set. I don't really have it on anybody. I'm sure it has its uses though, but I am personally not a big fan. And I think World 4 is probably a world I would recommend the least, just by based on what sets we do get from World 4. This set is pretty good for effect hit rates. I think this set can be really good on a character like Genshin or the other sets I mentioned with crit rate. So this set's really good because you increase your effect hit rate by 10%, and your attack is also increased by an amount that is equal to 25% of effect hit rate, up to a maximum of 25%. So you having an extra amount of effect hit rate can be good for Yang since he'll be able to freeze more consistently. Not by much, by only 10%, but of course if you are building effect hit rate on him, then this could be really useful since you'll also be able to gain attack percent as well, which could be pretty useful for basically a double win. You get more attack and you get more effect hit rate for freezing. This set right here is pretty good for just increasing your crit damage. I don't personally like the secondary thing though, where when your crit damage is 120 or higher, your crit rate increases by 60%, but the end of your first attack, I don't really think that's great. If it was just your crit rate increases and that's it, like it doesn't have this part right here, I think this set would actually be amazing, but because it's only until the end of your first attack, I think it's kind of whatever. So personally, out of all the worlds, I actually, once again, I recommend World 6 and World 3 the most. I feel like these are really good worlds. This world is once again really good for your defensive preservation class characters, as well as your main damage dealers with this set. And World 3 is more universal, as you can slap this attack set on majority of characters, if not all, and you can also slap this set on all your healers. So either way, pretty good sets regardless, and I do think doing your simulated universe each week will definitely be worth it, and I hope these tips do help, because when you go through simulated universe each week, you get a bunch of rewards. You are able to get 4 emulsifiers, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, right here and right here, which means that you'll be able to get 4 free drops from the relics, or rather the plantar sets from the worlds, which in turn results in you having more plantar options. And when you do get those emulsifiers, once again, I recommend either World 6 or World 3. And once again, as I said, I hope these tips do help, and if they did help, make sure to hit the subscribe button for more Honkai style content. I will be going over numerous characters that are coming out, and I'm also doing more guides and so on. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave a comment down below, I guess, your tips for simulated universe, and just let me know what you guys have been using to clear the worlds so far, what you guys recommend for the blessings, or whether the path blessing you pick in the beginning, what teams you use, and how does it work for you. And I hope all of you have a nice one. Peace.